things get brighter. Ooh, child, things are gonna get easier. Ooh, child, things get brighter. Someday, yeah, we'll put it together and we'll get it undone. Someday, when your head is much lighter. Someday, yeah, we'll walk in the rays of a beautiful sun. Someday, when the world is much brighter. Ooh, child, things are gonna be easier. Ooh, child, things will be brighter. Ooh, child, things are gonna be easier. Ooh, child, things will be brighter. Someday, put it together and we'll get it undone. Someday, someday, yeah, we'll walk in the rays of a beautiful sun. Someday, 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 we'll get it undone. Yeah. Someday, 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 ooh, child, things are gonna get easier. Ooh, child, things will get brighter.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Apollo Show, where we're all about the racial unification nation, and we're all about unity, peace, and love. Today, I got a special guest with me. I got a friend that I grew up with in school, and she went on to become what I consider a hero. We got the nurses, we got the firefighters, we got the police, but then people can't tend to forget about the educators. Those are the people that make the big difference, in the next generation and the next leaders that's coming up. So, I'm handing it over to my friend Katy, and Katy, how's it going today?
It's going good, going good. Glad to be here. Beautiful weekend, and yeah, great to have this opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad you got to sit down because, like I said, you're an educator at the Brooklyn Center Elementary School. And so, I know it's a very diverse school and all that stuff. So I decided I wanted to sit down with you and kind of give the people something, your perspective of, your experience and what you've been doing and how long you've been doing it. So just give the people a little rundown about you, give them your name, just a little rundown that you want to share with the people.
Okay, all right. Well, my name's Katy Leach. I was formerly Katy Shriver when you knew me growing up, but yeah, I'm a teacher. I've been a teacher at Brooklyn Center Elementary. This will be my 18th year there. So it's been incredible to be a pillar in one spot. I was just in a evening program, and there was a parent that was on. It was a parent involvement kind of thing on Zoom, as everything is right now. And it was one of my students, and now she's a mom, and she has 2 kids there at our elementary school, and she's just all full of school spirit because she came up in that school, and now is bringing her kids there. So yeah, it's been an honor to be able to stay put in one place for that long, because there's something special about watching the growth of the people you work with. So should I just tell you a little bit about me and kind of how I grew up and how I came to be, and then we can, talk about some different issues?
Yeah, go ahead and just run down, your history and what made you decide to get an education, that kind of stuff.
All right. Yeah. So I am 43. So I grew up I was born in 1978, and just with my mom, and we lived in North Minneapolis, kind of in the little more southern Camden area. And so it was just kind of her and I also had a grandpa that was a big influence. And we were poor, but I was blessed because she was very devoted mom. And so that really, that one person standing by your side throughout life is just a blessing. So for all the single moms out there, just keep loving up those kids, because it really does make a difference to have one solid person. But I was, kind of thinking about how race shaped, became, how I became aware of it all. And this is a lot of exploration teachers are going through in my district right now, is just really, digging deep into our own backgrounds and biases and how we came to be and how we can, grow and reflect from there. So I was one piece that kind of always comes back to me is I remember my grandpa and mom, they were big debaters. I always thought they were fighting because they would get really passionate and yell at each other. But I remember one of their big debates was about, my family is passionate about equality and trying to make a better world for all people, particularly people of color, particularly Black folks. Even when my grandpa was young, he was born in 1920. He has a story where when he was like in kindergarten, there was a Black boy who was getting beat up by two older kids, and he went and got right involved and kind of punched some guy. So he's just been a little warrior back in the 1920s, so
Right.
it's a passion of my family to keep that fight alive and be a part of it. And I remember my mom, she grew up in the 70s, so she is kind of peace and love. And so I remember her and my grandpa always kind of debating about which approach is best. Is it Martin Luther King's approach, which my mom would just, that's the approach that's going to get us to a better place. And then my grandpa would fight her just equally and say, nope, we need Malcolm X's approach. That's the approach. And they would just battle about it. And so I think that kind of, I respected them both equally, and I heard both of their sides. And I think that I kind of became to encompass both of those sides. I got a warrior spirit, but I'm also, try to nurture love and that sort of thing. So I think that probably had a big influence on me growing up. But growing up in a single parent house, it was survival was the way of life. So it was always about getting enough money for food, paying that rent, cars, old cars breaking down. And, I just realized from a young age that, being poor makes life harder, and it increases anxiety, and it's harder to find peace within the struggle. And so I think, I saw that all around me with all my friends I grew up with. And I think that really is what drove me to become a teacher. Partly there was a lot of desperation just in the hearts and minds of my friends growing up. First of all, coming of age is hard enough as it is for everybody. But
Right.
when you have all these obstacles and these barriers that are standing in your way, a lot of people lose hope. A lot of people are lost, and I really believe that for me, I had a few mentors along the way that kind of showed me a path to a better life, a path to realizing my dreams. And in about ninth grade, I knew that I wanted to be a teacher. And it felt like a really long road to get there at that time. It was overwhelming to imagine the climb. And I'm not going to lie to you, the climb to get there was difficult. And there were many times where I almost didn't make it, but for me, having that conviction of wanting to be a teacher, it helped me pick myself up after lots of hard moments, and just keep going until I could get there. So that was.
So what made that trip so difficult for you to get to the education level, like where you wanted to be?
Well, no one in my family had ever gone to college, so I didn't have any examples in my life. I hadn't visited colleges. I knew that you had to go to college to become a teacher, so that I knew, but those kinds of barriers. But also, I think for me, had a lot of real close friends, and I'm a single parent family, so my friends were my family, like so many people end up being, and so many of them were really struggling. I mean, I had it was the 90s, right? I mean, I had 5 friends killed in the 90s. I
Right.
had people going in and out of jail. There was a lot of people having babies. There was a lot of addiction and self-destructive behavior. And when you love people and care about them and are trying to, get through it together, it can derail you. And so, once I actually, and there was times where I almost, didn't make it myself to college or to, the next steps. And once I started working with kids, I started working at Webster Elementary in Northeast in the early 90s. And that was really, really, really pivotal for me, because once I started put myself in a role of as a leader for children, it made me question my own integrity. And it made me say, okay, if you're going to stand in front of these kids and preach this stuff, you need to live this stuff.
Right.
And that really, and to this day, working with kids has just shaped my life in a way that I want to live in a way that that kids can respect. I want to be a person, not just in front of them, but also at home that kids can respect. And so, just it's really helped me just being with children and in a leadership role, whether it's a youth worker or a teacher.
So what subjects do you teach and what age?
Yeah, I teach right now. I teach 4th grade. I my first year of teaching in 2003, I was in Minneapolis at that same school, Webster. I was a science teacher in middle school, and that was fun, challenging but fun. But I was laid off from there. So in 2004 is when I started working at Brooklyn Center Elementary School, formerly Earl Brown. And I taught 6th grade for a few years, and then like 12 years of 3rd grade. And now I've been in 4th grade for a while. So 9 and 10-year-olds is who I'm in front of now. So I love it. I love 4th grade.
Right. So tell us about the pros and cons, because I know that, Webster was kind of diverse, but I know Brooklyn Center is a lot more diverse. So what are the pros and cons of, dealing with, diverse children? I know there can be like the positive experiences, but it also can be, some parts can be a little difficult, challenging, shall I say, if the children come from a certain background, a certain upbringing. Like, how did you adjust to that, all them different personalities and backgrounds?
Yeah. Well, I'm a person who loves humans, and so for me, like, every human's a mystery, and I like to see what makes them tick. And so I always approach my teaching that way in the beginning of the year, as an opportunity to just really get to know each individual. And I don't know, I was born to teach, because they do blossom in front of me. And for me, I went to Willard, which was on Penn there in 16th, and then Franklin with you. And so I always went to diverse schools, and I always knew that I was blessed to be surrounded and have friends of all different cultures, because it expanded my world. It expanded, in so many different ways, whether it was music or food, or if it was just experiencing different households. And so when you teach in a school that has so much beautiful diversity, and we really do, there's not really a super majority in our school. Like, it's very diverse. The main cultures we have probably is African American and biracial children, Hmong children, and Latino children, which oftentimes come from many different countries down there in Mexico, Central, and even South America. And then we also have a real big population of families from Liberia, and they oftentimes are more recent immigrants. So their culture is still a real deep part of their upbringing. So there's just, and other cultures too. We do have Somali and some East African cultures too. So, as a teacher who teaches elementary, you teach all the subjects. And so there's just so many opportunities to pull in their background, their knowledge, their expertise in their cultures, and bring that into the classroom. So I think most people who either have a child of a different culture, tend to want their kids to grow up with other children and staff that look like them, and that, they can find some camaraderie with that. So to me, it's the richest classroom you can be in as far as that goes. But unfortunately, the older I get, like when I went to college, so for me, all I really knew was North Minneapolis growing up. But when
Right.
I got to college and became a teacher, we started doing these practicums in all these different suburbs. And it was the most heartbreaking experience for me because of seeing the unbelievable disparage or that the resources were not equal. And
Right.
I'd see a computer lab for every 2 classrooms had their own computer lab, and in lab before laptops and all that, right? But it
Right.
was just absolutely, I mean, it still is. Okay. If anybody doesn't know and hasn't gone to different schools outside of their own, we do not have equal resources in schools. And my school, has fought hard to try to bring in as many resources as we can through grants and everything. But the bottom line is we do not get, the same amount of money to spend in our schools as these suburban schools do. And a lot of that came from originally it used to be all based on property tax, how schools were funded.
Right.
And then believe it or not, when Jesse Ventura was our governor, he did change that. And so
Mm.
now it is not based on property taxes. So the base amount that goes out to schools is the same, but these levies that communities can pass in their voting, they can vote on levies. The levies just bring that inequality right back again, because some communities pass huge levies. So
Right.
parents have to make a decision. They have to say, do I want my kid to be in a school full of diversity and richness that way and not have the resources equal?
Right.
Or do I send them out to a more white suburban school, giving up that cultural experience in that way, but they have the resources? And that is
Right.
not a fair thing to ask parents to have to decide. It
Right.
should be, that should not be something that, it should be equal. The resources should be equal. And so I see that as one of the very hardest things. It's really difficult. It's just difficult to accept. It's not, I don't want to accept it, but to change things at a government level, it takes a path, and I've done some of that lobbying, but nowhere near enough because I'm usually spending all my time in a classroom. So that's one aspect. Yeah.
Do you think that's racially, I didn't mean to cut you off, but do you think that that's racially motivated? The resources being, funded one way in one area and different in another area?
It's certainly hard to say that it's not, but I guess I can't say for sure one way or another, because automatically you want to say, yep, it sure
Right.
is, because it's been this way since I was a kid. So, and I don't know, I don't know, I don't want to get too political, but the truth is, like, I'm a Democrat, but we've had Democrats in office in Minnesota most of my life. Not all, we've gone back and forth a bit, but most of it.
Right.
And that it's concerning to me that, the platform that Democrats stand upon has not come to the place where we're recognizing these disparities and doing something about them that makes a really big impact. And don't get me wrong, I know people are trying. I know there's people who are in there in government fighting tooth and nail to make these things happen. But
Right.
I think we have a ways to go.
So what do you think is a possible, I mean, not to go too far into that, but
Mhm.
like, what do you think is a possible solution to kind of even that out a little bit? Because like my sons, I moved to Hopkins when I left Minneapolis, and no, that school is really diverse, but at the same time, it wasn't always that way. And they
Yeah.
do got a ton of resources, but I also know that where I came from, I left Edison and went to Henry, and it's just like the resources, I mean, it's just like not even comparable to what the experience is, that my sons got to go through at the school they went to. So it's just like, what do you think that is something just people or parents, whoever, can possibly do to kind of get this ball rolling a little faster on solving that?
I just, the only thing I can think of is that I didn't know. So when I was growing up, I didn't know that these disparities were so big. So I think, like, people even just sharing on social media, or, I mean, if more people really realize that, say, for example, one of the resources that kills me, well, technology is one, that's a big one. But another one is resource teachers. So a lot of these suburban districts in elementary school, one of your main goals is to teach reading, teach children to read. And
Right.
a lot of these more white affluent districts, they have specialized teachers with their master's program degree, and they teach children who are just below grade level. They work with them on interventions to get them, to make more growth, and they have allocations for that. And in a lot of our schools, and in my school and a lot of Minneapolis schools, they don't have that. So one classroom teacher might have a huge spread of readers in their classroom, and they have to be the masters and figure out how to do all those interventions. And it's not realistic. Yes, some teachers manage it, but it's not realistic, So I don't know. I don't remember if I fully answered your question there, but.
No, I just find that crazy because it's like, when I was looking into all this, stuff I'm trying to get involved in, there's a ton of money floating around. And hold on.
Okay.
There's a ton of money floating around. And I just find it unbelievable that, this money goes here, that money goes there. And it's just like, I just don't understand, what's the, it seems like it'll be a simple solution when you, from the outside looking at it, but it's just like, people out there in the field is actually in the school district and dealing with all this stuff is just like, I just don't, it's unbelievable that it just repeats itself year after year. And it's like, I ain't even got an answer for it. You know what I'm saying? And that's why I was just like curious to what you thought about that. I wonder
if the people making decisions about money, the lawmakers at the Capitol, if they really understand, if they really know fully about the disparities. And so bringing it to them, and that's, teachers get one day a year, they can go lobby. And so oftentimes we do try to bring those kinds of topics to it, but that's one day a year, right? There's a lot of people, different causes that have lobbyists there every day, all year long, and so, yeah, I don't know. I'm not totally sure yet, but believe me, it is something that I think about a lot, and that I think we just need to, we need a radical change when it comes to that, so.
Yeah, that's one thing I talk about too, is like politics needs to change. Like we need the people at, in the cities and, different areas, class-based wise, let's call it the middle class, lower class. I just feel like politics needs to be pushed more, because it's like the people that's making all these decisions, it's almost like they don't have the experience. They're almost like naive to the realities of what people deal with every day. And it's just like, these are children just like everyone else's children. It's like, why wouldn't the empathy kick in and say, we need to spread this wealth out and spread all this stuff, these resources out evenly? But obviously some people don't think like that, which is why I say is that, some type of way we got to kind of figure out a way to push politics on our children coming up, so that way they can live through these experiences and can take that to that next level. So that way they can tell their, their counterpart, hey, I lived that life. We need this over there. We need that over there. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, absolutely. And, on that note, another challenging thing about working in a diverse school is the pool of teachers that we draw from. Minnesota has, I'm just going to go this route. Minnesota has a lot of well-intentioned white women who become teachers. Okay. And I know that because I went, going to the U, I thought, well, I'm going to a city school, there was just no diversity. I mean, none. It was just even right in the city, and St. Cloud State, I went there for a year or two. Really, really not. We have a major problem with representation, particularly as classroom teachers. We have a lot of, like my school, it has a pretty diverse staff, but not in the classroom teacher realm, right? Which is the profession that's going to pay you enough to get into middle class eventually, if you stick with it, right? It's going to get you to that place where money doesn't need to be that survival, that, survival mode I was talking about doesn't need to be the primary focus. So if you really look at it, I mean, that's another real problem we have. And I think, you get all of these young teachers, and I'm sorry, a lot of them are white women, I'm just keeping it real, with great intentions, but you are your life experiences. And so when you are coming into an inner city school and you haven't lived it, there's a long road to be able to really connect with the kids and their families and their experiences in a real authentic way without being able to have some shared common experiences. And don't get me wrong, of course, there's some aspects of us as human beings that is shared, but there are some cultural aspects. There are some, specific factors that have to do with what neighborhood you grew up in and everything like that,
Right.
So I think that's, definitely somewhere we need to grow. One thing that, Edison had, and how I ended up at Edison, was they had an education magnet there. So I think it was
Right.
like 11th and 12th grade, you could take a bunch of classes towards becoming a teacher.
Right.
And that's what brought me to Edison. And their philosophy was this homegrown teacher philosophy, that if we can take our kids, start giving them, some education 101 and some backgrounds and stuff, and help even give them some experiences, because that's how I started at Webster. They bussed me over there from high school, and that's how I got in my foot in the door, to get
Right.
in front of kids. And, but we don't have enough of that. We don't have enough opportunities, because I do have students who want to become teachers, many of them. But
Right.
what happens to them on their pathway? Do they ever get that door that opens to help them, really feel it and get in front of kids? And how do you like it? And, all that as well. So I think we that's another thing that we could invest in more, is helping to make that pathway to becoming a teacher a little easier to navigate for young people coming of age,
Right.
and get more of our city children who have a desire to go into education, a pathway to get there that's not, impossible.
Yeah, that's why I'm big. You're correct on that. That's why I'm big on, like, mentorship and after school programs type things. Because the thing about it is, you never know what them kids are going home to. You know what I'm saying? Like, even with this, this pandemic going on, it's like it's a lot of kids that were counting on them lunches and those breakfasts, that they were eating at school. And it's like, you never know what, no matter how bright and nice and this kid is, you never know what they walk into once they get off that school bus. And so it's like, that's why I feel like, I'm, like I said, I'm gonna do my part to get my, program going. But it's like, I just feel like a lot more people need to step up and get and contribute to programs that are going to help the young people, because they're the one that's coming up next and can actually, I believe, makes real change that's needed to solve these problems that's been repeating itself over the years. We gotta guide the next leaders. Just get more involved with the next leaders is my my thought.
Absolutely, Isa. And one of the things that any platform I get, I always try to talk about is, so before I was a teacher, I was a youth worker over there at Webster, and we had a big grant. We had this opportunity to like build program that fit the needs of the community, and it was a wonderful experience for that reason, that there was money behind getting young people who know what the needs are of the community and to build programs. And we did. And what our philosophy was we would look at the elementary, it was a K through 8 school. So it was kind of, junior high and elementary together. And we would identify the children who were very influential to their peers. Okay.
Right.
Now, that doesn't mean these were the kids making great choices all the time. These
Right.
were kids who commanded a room, kids who had leadership qualities, whether
Right.
they had been guided in the right direction or not. And we really connected with children like that, and we pull them into the program, and we really help them to see, we see something in you that is the world needs. And then we started like a junior staff program where we mentored and we gave them opportunity to be leaders, and we gave them skills and taught them games to do with kids and all these things. And the great thing, this was called the Beacons program. It's still around. It's all through Minneapolis right now. And to tell you the truth, there are many young people who I got to work with in the early 90s who are running all those programs now. They did keep mentoring. This program then went into Edison, and it
Right.
mentored a lot of the kids through Edison, and many of them are leading youth development programs around the city now. And that's what I'm talking about. And even us, Esau, we grew up, you see, I believe that people who grow up with more challenges, the things they're facing at home, everything that goes with poverty, which
Right.
sometimes can be some addiction stuff, which I know happens everywhere, but then there can be domestic stuff. Then there can be, just all the challenges around just making ends meet when the income isn't there,
Right.
but those, when you grow up with that, as hard as it is, and how we don't want kids to have to go through that, but in the same sense, it's that whole idea of how a diamond is made. There is beauty and wisdom and strength that comes through, going overcoming adversity, right? And
Right.
so that's why we need to be, I feel like, if your programs you're talking about, just encourage people to always remember, don't give up at it in junior high and high school when it's harder to connect with kids. Yes, but they need it the most. We need shepherding, help to shepherd kids through that transition to adulthood, because that transition to adulthood is brutal. It's
Right.
brutal. I mean,
Right.
especially if you're coming from a school that is not preparing you for college, say, for example, where you're
Right.
starting your first year of college, you made it there, but they're asking you to write papers that you're not prepared to write,
Right.
and all these, and not just one paper, like 3, 4 classes asking you. And it's just, I mean, yeah, we just, that mentorship is everything.
Right.
So,
Because it goes back, what you're saying goes back to, people say a lot of cliche things, but it goes back to that, it takes a village to raise a child, you know what I'm saying? It's really that simple. Because at the end of the day, like me, for example, I'm from North Minneapolis, but what people don't understand is that my mom and dad are still married to this day. So being that I grew up in, I was like right there. I was literally on Queen Avenue, 1 block from Willard, where you went to
oh,
elementary school at. So it's like that spot got really bad at some point in time, with crime and poverty and stuff. So 95% of my friends, they didn't experience what I experienced. Like I consider my homeboys, they didn't experience what I experienced. My dad was there the entire time, still there. Parents married the whole time. So my thing is why all of a sudden I got this urge to want to get more involved is because, now I done raised my sons, and my youngest is going to the U of M next year. My other one goes to Normandale right now. So it's just like, I feel like, okay, now it's my turn to go give back, because there's a lot of boys that didn't get what my boys got. And so it's just like, what people don't understand is that, like you said, high school and that older age, that I would say 13 to even 23, them kids still need guidance because they don't have it. Because 9 times out of 10, either both parents isn't there, or the parents they come from a different era where things are different now, and they didn't need guidance. Like my parents, they did a great job, but they didn't talk to me about credit and different things that you can kind of help these kids with that, they never get experience to. And I just feel like as adults, especially people that come from that area, we got to step up, and we got to make that a tradition to continue to step up and, make it like a revolving door that we're going to keep. As we get older, we go back and give and try to make that community, build that community back up where we came from. So that way we can get them in positions of power to make real change in this world. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And make that path more clear, because, if you're if you're a teenager or something in a family where no one's gone to college,
Right.
there's not people there necessarily to show you the way. Whereas if you have a mentor who made it through that process and they can help you to see the steps involved, then you have a pathway, you get it. But if you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
You
Right.
know?
And so, I mean, that what you said about the teachers, about how they'll come in and they haven't really got the experience. I feel like, me personally, that's partially to do with, besides the obvious infiltration of races, I feel like that's partially the reason that the policing is so horrible in areas like Minneapolis, because a lot of those police officers have never even been in the city. Then they got to come to a city and, judge people and police people. They have no idea, nothing about where they came from, why they act the way they act, what their culture is, why do they dress the way they dress. They just go by this education that's like nothing of reality, of the situation. I feel like the same, that relates to what you said about the teachers that are coming. They care, but they don't know how to care for that particular situation. You know what I'm saying?
That's
And
right.
I just feel like all that stuff comes from, that's part of the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing now. So people can start to see that we got to start letting our guards down and being open to interacting with each other and going in places we've never been before and getting to know different people's cultures and their, different beliefs and how they live and whatever. And so it's that, I just feel like all that'll help with, especially in situations like you said, the teachers. It's just like, say if you're going to do an internship, go do an internship at, North High School or something like that. If you're going to try to work in that type of environment, go do different things and be open to that,
Yep. And you can grow. You can. And there are many, many, many teachers who grew up in a very different background who did just that. And they are great teachers, and they are relating with kids and making a world of difference. But, it's definitely has to be something you're consciously recognizing that I need to build my competency. I might have the degree now, but I need to build my cultural competency. And I think, that's just, that's one thing. And then, of course, you got the other thing where you've got these people out in the rural areas that maybe have never ever even been in the city, haven't met anybody other than their own white people, their culture, and then they have teachers who grew up there who are teaching them that same thing. Like I didn't grow up there, so it was the greater Minnesota was a bit of a unknown to me until I got older and I realized that the problem, I mean, just the absolute horrible thing that ignorance
Right.
creates in our world, and ignorance in regards of life experience again, right? You know, like all you know is what you know, and if you are completely out of touch and you try to form an opinion about like what's happening here, say for example, you know, this last summer with the murder of George Floyd, to me it's like, if you don't have any life experience whatsoever in the city and you don't, your cultural competency is very low, how is it for you to have a strong opinion about all of this? Because I don't know, it's, you know, I just realized the gap, the huge gap, and I think it's actually sad, because
Right.
I do think that, you know, like I actually do have a half sister, and I used to bring, she grew up in a rural area, and I would go pick her up. She's 10 years younger than me. And I bring her into the city and I give her cultural experiences because I really wanted her to see the world outside of this little town she grew up in. And she
Right.
has always been eternally grateful. She is a little bit of a candle in the darkness out there, where because she still lives out there. And those just those minor experiences had a huge impact, you know?
Right.
And so that's where we've got to try to figure out how to bridge that gap too, because until, you know, until we can see, till everyone can see each other as human beings that are all wanting a better life and wanting good for our kids and wanting peace, you know, until we can really see that and know that, you know, you're going to have these, you know, the division that we see in the country, you know, today.
Yeah, I work with a lot of guys like that, and at my job or whatever. I mean, literally, I'm the only black guy at my job, and so I had walked in on a conversation when this whole protesting had started. You know, when it got really intense. You know, earlier last summer or whatever. And you know, I walked in on a conversation where they were talking about, and I hear them talking about protesters. Then all of a sudden, welfare got in the conversation, and all this other stuff that just was like stereotype on top of stereotype. And initially, I'm not gonna lie, my blood was boiling. I wanted to snap off, but I didn't. Instead, I chose to jump in the conversation, and I just, you know, the one guy kind of walked away, but the other guy stayed, and I kind of went into him, you know, like, you know, you got to understand, you got to see things a little different, because I'm like, you're like 55 years old. How can you even still think that way? It's like, do you not understand? Like me, for example, you see me come to work every day with you, you know that I got, you know, some children I'm raising, you know what I'm saying? You know everything about me, but you can still hold that type of belief. Is crazy. You know, you should like look at it like you rip us apart. We got the same materials that make us. You got the same desires, I'm sure, that I want. I'm sure you want your family to be fed. You want to live a happy lifestyle and all this stuff. And you know, you want the same things that I want out of life. And what's weird is I kind of converted him a little bit, which I didn't. That wasn't my motive, was to convert him. But I did give it. I can tell I gave him something to think about, because it was
You
just like
educated him.
Exactly. And some people, they won't take it all in, but just at least if you throw a little couple crumbs in their brain, just give them something to think about. And it's just like, you know, maybe he can take that conversation to, you know, his little group of friends that probably don't never leave their area. You know what I mean?
And those seeds are powerful. I bet you that man will never forget that conversation. And I
Right.
commend you, because I also struggle with blood boiling when it comes to ignorance. It's difficult
Right.
for me. I'm just being honest where I'm at in my journey. I tend to avoid
Right.
having those conversations, mostly because I don't trust myself to not lose my cool, you know?
Right.
But I commend you for taking the deep breaths and going about it the way you did, because that's what I do believe, that's the way to help unity really come about. And it takes bravery and courage, and it takes doing what you maybe don't want to do. And I think that's what we all need to really look inside ourselves, because everyone is facing having conversations that are difficult. And I'll tell you, as a white person, many white people have it within their own family, whether it's, you know, close family or further out. There are people that you need to have conversations with. And
Right.
it's not easy. It's, a lot of people I think just kind of avoid each other, and it's kind of split in families, and that sort of a thing. So I'm proud of you and thank you for sharing that story with us today,
Mm.
that you were able to just face it, because I think every time you face it, probably it might get easier, maybe.
Right. Right. I mean, but the thing is, I also have in the back of my head, there's some people you're not going to change. There's some people just like, and I was going to ask you too, while we're not to get off topic, but
No.
I noticed that with children, it seems like they see color less than like even us. And it's almost like it's getting better. And I don't think, I'm just wondering if other people are seeing that, especially like being that you're around children way more than me. It's like, just even with my kids, it's just like their group of friends is like so diverse. And like, even me, it's like, because of the way I am, like my brother like gave me crap one time because I had a birthday get together about, maybe 8-9 years ago. And it was just like, I probably had someone from every nationality. I even had one of my friends, one of my friends is in a wheelchair because she's paralyzed. And so she comes there, then I got this guy, this guy, this guy. And it was like the most diverse, weirdest group of people ever. But it was like, these are people I'm comfortable around. It's like, I just go by, okay, what kind of spirit are you carrying around? What kind of energy are you carrying around? Because if, other than that, I don't care what race you is, what color you is, because the thing about it is, I got people of my race, I got people of this, that, and that, that's just like, they don't have good intentions for me. So it's like, I'm not going to just, it took me a while, I wouldn't say a while, but it took me into my early 20s to get to the state where I was just like, I'm going to start letting down my walls a little bit more and exploring more different, things, just because I wanted to grow as a person. And it's just like, like I said, with the children coming up now, I feel like they're already in that at a younger age. Do you notice that at your school?
Absolutely. It is I mean, it's, again, I don't have a lot of white people in my school. So I got to say
Right.
that, as the caveat, but the, I used to, and even
Mm.
then there is just so much of it's a we when you're in a classroom, and
Right.
we are all one. And the thing is with school is the one common denominator is age and
Right.
developmentally, right? And that is like, that's big. That's big. You're going to relate more with people your age, and so, yeah, they have a beautiful, I don't see a lot of racism with 9 and 10-year-olds.
Right.
As a matter of fact, what's difficult for me, if I'm just being honest, is I oftentimes am the one who have to teach them about um, history
Right.
and about racism and about and help to kind of lift the veil, and it's sad, like, right? I mean, and I know parents have to do it. Parents who have especially African American children have to have those talks early on, and it never feels good to be the ones to kind of break that idyllic kind of utopia that children can have, right? Because I do think children who are raised in a loving home that doesn't teach racism and doesn't talk, teaches love, right?
Right. Right.
Oftentimes they do have this beautiful utopic type spirit about them, and I know that it's important to prepare them for the world, but I also think it's important to nurture the hopes of a better world in them too, because that hope, that vision, that becomes their dream. And children are building a foundation of, because they're always anticipating growing. Children are always like, oh, am I going to lose a tooth? Or am I going to go through puberty? Or they know it's always about the next step, right? And so
Right.
I just try to find that balance of teaching children about the world we live in, and unveiling and talking about some of the truth and current events as well as the past, but also helping them to recognize the beauty and wisdom in their own view of the world and what it could be, and
Right.
not to diminish that and, oh, that's not the world we live in, and stomp it down. I think there has to be a balance,
Right.
because I personally believe if we had kids running things, we would have a much better world. And they're so smart these days, Apollo. They are brilliant.
Right.
They are, with the technology they're growing up in and all the information they're surrounded by and all these experiences. I mean, they are, to me, sometimes I'm just like, I every year they get more and more brilliant. And I'm just
Right.
so proud and so lucky to be able to spend time with them. And my job is to kind of help them face their fears. Like I do a lot of theater with them. So we do a lot of readers theater. It's real motivating to learn to read when you can read scripts and stuff. So we even have costumes and props, and every 3 weeks we'd be doing that when we were in person. But unfortunately, I haven't been able to do that this year. But yeah, they definitely, they don't know that greater Minnesota, right? They don't know how much racism is way out there sometimes, you know,
Right.
and not even way out there, right? Maybe just even 10 miles away. But,
Right.
you know, yeah, I think that children really do teach us how to be our best selves, you know. They
And
exemplify a lot. And you know, I want to get back to one more thing. You had said, you know, what's
mm,
kind of challenging about teaching kids in inner city and maybe families that have more poverty and stuff. And I think one of the hard things that, and I think this probably is faced with teachers everywhere, but it's a little more, it's stronger when kids are growing up in poverty because of that. You know, when you're in survival mode, your brain releases a lot of cortisol from, you know, just kind of always having to watch your back or worrying about the next meal or whatever. And so with that, a lot of times there's not a lot of emotional regulation. Sometimes they might be around people who are just super stressed out and, you know, modeling a lot of that. And then every child is born with a different emotional state too. And so, you know, some kids have anger issues, you know,
right.
and so one thing that you have to be an expert on if you're going to teach in the inner city, and you have to really recognize is important, is recognizing that these big emotions that kids feel, they don't feel like they have control over them all the time. And to be a person who has anger issues it's very difficult for children
Right.
to deal with that. Yes, there's victims, right? They hurt people, and we do need to focus on that. But you can't ignore the kids who have anger issues. You need to recognize and have empathy for them and realize like they don't like losing their temper. They feel out of control. And so as adults, we need to help them to recognize that we know that that's hard and that it feels like you can't have any control. But here's some things you can do. Try this next time and see if it helps. Or when you start to feel your blood boiling, try these things before you snap out, you know, and creating classrooms where we allow children space for that. I I see teachers who struggle with classroom management, and the children who do have anger issues get kind of, you know, they're the naughty kids, they're the bad kids, they get sent out of the room, and then they feel shame when they come back, and they feel, you know,
Right.
and so we can't take that approach of just these consequences and, you know, that sort of approach. We need to have empathy for all of our kids, and especially, I don't want to say especially, but I do believe especially kids who have anger issues, because it's scary to have anger. When you have anger you can't control, that's scary for a child, and they're just children. And if we as adults can keep cool and never turn them into a villain, they're children, they need our help. And so that's just something that I want to try to help young teachers find their way with, because I have found my way with that, and I do not have classroom management problems. My children thrive in my room, and all of them. So, and I do think that's a big reason why.
Yeah, because like I said, I mean, I had a problem, you know, at times where I would, you know, be ready to explode. And it's just like one thing I learned was that, you know, it's that's a surface issue. And if a person's not willing to give you the benefit of the doubt and understand that that's just a surface issue, that there's more underneath that, because anger is usually never what's going on with a person who's angry. It's usually sadness, depression, anxiety. It's something going on underneath that that's buried under there, that they're showing the anger because that's the easiest thing to show. So it's just like, if more, like you said, if more teachers thought how you think about it, it's just like they would be able to give their kid multiple chances, because they don't know what their kid's going through at home, or what they walk into every day, or what do they hear before they go to bed at night. They don't understand that stuff. And it's like, people, like I said, especially in that your position, you know, they got to understand that you know, you're coming with a lot of different, you know, beliefs and backgrounds and traditions. You got to adjust to it with these kids. You can't just be a one track, you know,
No,
situation. It's not a one track situation.
it's not. Everyone has a unique situation. And when you can meet them where they're at in that moment in time, they're so thankful and grateful for that love
Right.
and that patience that you don't have to battle with those kids. they appreciate that you see them for where they're at and you give them a little break when they need it. And you can't look at your kids as all the same. You just can't.
Right.
They're not. They're individual humans in individual bodies going through individual lives, and you have to be willing to put in that kind of effort to see them all for that. So yeah.
So do you think this has to do it? Because I mean, my thought on it is like how we first started this part of this conversation was about how the children are evolving where they don't see color like nowhere near as much as we did, or definitely not what our parents did. But
Yeah.
the thing about it is that I think that's part of the reason why our political system for the past 4 years particularly was so racially divided and pushing that division, is because I feel like the people that want things to stay the way they are, they see this happening. And I think they're scared of the potential that this world is about to become equal and diverse and, unified and all that. And I think there's some people out here that's just like, they're panicking right now. And it's like, I'm not going to put it on one particular race. I'm not going to say that because there's people of all backgrounds that have bad intentions. So I'm going to say I just feel like evil is getting nervous because good is starting to surface more and more. And, I just feel like this is a time where people that are like in our position where we're still young enough to make stuff happen, but we're old enough to pass on wisdom. We need to step up 10 times harder because I see something that's a lot of potential coming up after us, and we got to like embrace that and like
They're brilliant.
They're
They're the smartest generation to ever live on the face of this earth. And I believe, as far as knowledge, as far
Right.
as having access to knowledge, now don't get me wrong, you got all that misinformation right now, because there's
Right.
always two sides to every coin, but there's the potential. They're not using encyclopedias to find out information. I mean, you got it at your fingertips in a way that
Right.
you, like you said, and I think earlier you and I were talking about YouTube, man. You can learn anything on YouTube.
Right.
Like these little elementary kids are teaching their teachers stuff on technology, and so you're right. You're right. They need us more than ever to help guide that, right? Because it could easily get pulled into a millions, directions that are misdirected. So yeah, that's everybody, teacher or not, everybody who cares about children, find a way to touch the lives of kids in one way or another, whether that's just cousins, nieces, nephews, whether that is, neighbors, and just be a voice of sharing your life experience, your stories, your wisdom, things that are important, things that are important. Talk to kids about them, help open up their eyes a little bit to some of it, and let them know that kids need support to get to make that come of age, right? They need to be okay, and they need to have their basic needs met. And I think in North Minneapolis, a lot of the struggle we have is a lot of young people don't have those basic needs met. There's a lot of hungry teenagers. I mean, there are. And I'm sorry, I'm raising two boys right now. I have a 15-year-old and an 11-year-old. I can't believe the amount of food that they eat and how much they're growing. I mean, one's 6'4" already. He's 15. The other one's 5'9" and he's 11.
Wow.
But that boys particularly, they need it, man. I don't know about boys particularly. That's all I've raised. But
Right.
I mean, we got to just figure out a way to make sure all of our people have enough basic needs so that they can move on to the next level in their life and share their beautiful, wonderful gifts with the world, because the world desperately needs them. So
Right. All right. So like this channel is based on race relations, improvement. And so that's why I call it the Racial Unification Nation, that little RUN or whatever. So what could you, in closing, what could you just share with just with the audience in the world? Like, what do you think is your advice to getting things better racially, worldwide, nationwide, just in general?
Well, I come full circle, and I'll take a little bit of Malcolm X and a little bit of Martin Luther King's perspectives. And I'm proud of the people who are sacrificing their lives in protest and that are raising awareness to issues and making them on the forefront. I know everyone has different opinions about it all, but I am proud of people who are brave enough to go out there and raise awareness to problems that we have and demand change. So I mean, my hats go off. I didn't get to participate, and I did get to go to the memorial and do a little rally, but I didn't get to participate. I
Right.
know I had sick kids, and there was a lot going on during COVID. But either way, I'm thankful for people for really getting out there in that way. So that is, one side of it. The other side of it is to, like you said, learning more about politics, learning how to have our voices heard. Um, Doing more videos, right? Everyone's got a
Right.
camera right now. So I think that's helpful and powerful because that shows what's happening. You can see it, all these things are raising awareness to it. Being brave and having those hard conversations like you had with the people at work
Right.
is a big, big piece of it. And it's not an easy thing for everybody. Schools are like, after everything that happened this summer, we came back to school this year in my district, threw everything out the door that we were doing before, and we focused on getting rid of white supremacy in our institution of education, and from our superintendent all the way down to every staff to kids, what we're teaching, what we're talking about. I mean, so like, if you're a part of an institution, start looking critically at it. My mother-in-law's a nurse. She started noticing racist practices or racist like things happening even at her job, and addressed them. So look, just open your eyes up, and especially if you're white, take off your white privilege hat and put yourself in the shoes of other people who, just because of their color of the skin, are not getting equal education, equal healthcare, equal treatment, and do something about it. Be a voice. The more of us that can raise our voices about it, the more those other voices will quiet. I mean, eventually, I don't know. And change hearts through your stories. Thank you for what you're doing with Unity. I do believe we can find the answers together through our common experiences, and through recognizing that one thing we all have in common is love.
Right.
And that if we can have that be the center of how we try to live and how we try to treat people, I think that's a way to unify. Let's unify around love.
All right, it's perfect. Like I said, that's the purpose of what I'm doing. And so, what's crazy is, no matter how positive you try to be, there's always gonna be someone that got something negative to say. And it's like, I'm to the point now where it's just like, I laugh at people like that. But it's like, there's a lot of people that feel like, this race got their own problems, this race got their own problems. I'm like, okay, well, you can work on your in-house problems in your race, you know what I'm saying? If at the same time, unify and create allies with other people, because it's just like, at the end of the day, we're still all humans, but it's like some sections got particular things going on that they need to work on. But at the end of the day, we're all humans. We got to unify and get all the good-hearted people together and go at all. So if you got a problem, we're with you. If you got a problem, we're with you, and we're gonna attack all the problems together and do something different. Because like, people have tried unity and it's always been partial. But I just feel like right now, especially like you said with the children coming up next.
Yeah.
It's like, man, we're in a good position to make some real change if the right people just step up and go at it very aggressive and commit to it. You know what I'm saying? Because that's the thing about it, is people get comfortable and things get better for a short period of time. But it's something that's got to be committed because it's been done so long. You know what I mean?
Yep. It needs to be endure. I have one last advice for parents too.
Hmm.
Parents, remember how important your voice is. If you see things in your school that you are not happy with, if you hear stories from your children that you are not happy with, please exercise your voice. Please make sure that you contact the, teachers, administration. I personally think that teachers should all be giving out surveys to parents and to students on how they think things are going.
Right.
I'm not supportive of bad teachers. We need,
Right.
I think bad teachers gotta go. And when
Right.
I don't think there's very many of them, at least in my school particularly, like I don't even know if there's any right now. We have such an incredible staff. But if you're a parent and you feel like there's some damaging things happening in your kid's classroom, please speak up about it, because we need high quality people in front of our students. They deserve nothing less. To have to be exposed to suffering through a whole year in elementary school with one adult who's toxic and just, yeah, I don't know. So that's other advice to parents is just please remember how powerful your voice really is, and use it when it comes to your children's education. Expect the best and demand the best, and we can, hopefully provide that for more and more kids.
All right, like I said, in closing, I just want to again commend you for what you do. Greatly appreciate it. Very thankful for your mother for putting the spirit in you to have the type of heart you got, and to show the love for people, based on humanity. And like I said, you guys are heroes. People don't really give, especially pay, but they really don't give educators the props they deserve, man. It's like you guys make a huge impact. And like I said, the ones that think like you is more needed in a whole educational system. And like I said, we'll get there, but just wanted to give you your flowers while you're here and just tell you, thank you for what you do. Greatly appreciate it. I'm glad you are in the position you're in. And I know things are just only going to get better, and hopefully we can all get on the same page and make some real change in this world. And so,
Yeah.
is there any programs you want to shout out before we get out of here, or any things you want to shout out? Or, I mean, if not, it's no biggie.
Oh boy. Well, Brooklyn Center is a community school district, which means they have partnerships with medical, dental, eyeglasses, dentists come in the school. Like, if your district doesn't have programs like that, something to bring up, people out there, it's a really beautiful, model, and it's done really well in Brooklyn Center. All children ages birth through 18 who live or go to school in Brooklyn Center can go to the doctor and get medication for free at the community school clinic, which is partnered with Park Nicollet. So, yeah, that's what I'll say. Mm-hmm.
All right. All right. Well, thanks for that plug. And like I said, I really appreciate you stopping by. It was a great conversation. I knew it would be, but better than what I thought it was going to be, because I knew it was going to be good. But yeah, you got a lot of information in, and I really appreciate that for sharing that with everybody. And so, everybody, thank you for checking out Apollo latest episode. We have Katy, the great educating hero, and we got to give people, their props while they're here, and just let them know, in the moment, you're doing a great job. We appreciate you, and continue to do what you do. And thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for this opportunity. I'm honored.
Right. Thank you. So everybody, thanks for checking out the episode, you know what I'm saying? And like, subscribe, and share the video if you choose to. And thanks for tuning in.